As James said, I'm Martha. I'm the youth pastor here at St Andrews, and I am starting our series this evening called Passion. And I would like to give a disclaimer, if it doesn't make sense, if I go off on rambly tangents. I spent the past few days inhaling a lot of paint fumes, and so I blame that entirely. But yes, our new series, Passion. And this all stemmed out of the fact that in the church, we often talk about how Easter is the most important day and indeed week in the calendar. And yet, we only really speak about it once a year, and then we move on. We build it up, but we never actually take the time to sit with it a while, to really think and reflect on the incredible things Jesus does in the final week of his human life. So, this Lenten period will take a step back and look with fresh eyes at the Easter story, starting this evening. As a famous musical once put it, at the very beginning. We're going to spend all our time today in Luke 19, verses 28 to 48. So it'd be great if you have a Bible, or you can look it up on your phone, to look up those verses now. Luke is the third book in the New Testament, and it's one of 4 accounts of the life of Jesus that we have. In the book of Luke, we see Jesus ministering around the area of Jerusalem, and as chapter 19 begins, we join Jesus as he enters Jerusalem for the last week of his earthly life. But before we get into this, I want to start with a question. What is your attitude as you come into this Easter period? What are you bringing with you as you enter into Easter? If you're anything like me, this last year has thrown up a lot of questions for you. You may be struggling, you may be doubting, you may be exhausted, you may be at the end of your tether. We're going to use this half chapter of Luke to explore the different ways in which people reacted to Jesus and how we might find ourselves in the people throughout this story. So, like I said, if you've got a Bible, Luke 19, starting at verse 28. After Jesus had said this, he's just told another parable. After Jesus had said this, he went on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. As he approached Bethphage and Bethany, at the hill called the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples ahead, saying to them, "Go to the village ahead of you, and as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there, which no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If anyone asks you, 'Why are you untying it?' say, 'The Lord needs it.'" Those who were sent ahead went and found it just as he had told them. As they were untying the colt, its owners asked them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "The Lord needs it." They brought it to Jesus, threw their cloaks on the colt, and put Jesus on it. Often, when I read the gospel accounts of Jesus' life, I get very annoyed and often audibly exasperated at the disciples. Every time they ask stupid questions and get things wrong, I find myself silently screaming, "Jesus is right there, guys, come on." But here, for once, in this moment, in the story of Easter, we see Jesus asking them to do something that is actually pretty weird. But they know that he's got a reason, so they act in faithful obedience. This by no means means that they get it right from here on out every time. They mess up still, they get things wrong because they're human. They choose in this moment to trust that Jesus has a plan. It may not make sense to them. They probably were a bit worried about what would happen when they took some guy's donkey. But by this point, they knew the Messiah well enough to know that they just had to obey. They didn't have to get it. They just had to do what they were told. And thousands of years later, as followers and disciples of Jesus, we can often find ourselves struggling to see what God is doing. Maybe it doesn't make sense to us. Maybe we're scared. Maybe today we need to choose faithful obedience like the disciples did on this particular day. Because in their obedience, they are part of a prophecy being fulfilled. The prophecy is from Zechariah 9:9, and I'll just quickly read it. It says, "Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to righteous and victorious, lovely and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. When we faithfully obey Jesus, we get to be part of something far bigger than we could ever possibly ask or imagine. In this instance, the disciples are part of something that fulfills thousands of years worth of prophecy. The story moves on, and we start again on verse 36. As he went along, people spread their cloaks on the road. When he came near to the place where the road goes down to the Mount of Olives, the whole crowd of disciples began joyfully to praise God in loud voices for all the miracles they had seen. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord, peace in heaven and glory in the highest. Jesus is met by a group of people who have seen the glory. They have seen the miracles, they have seen the healing and the power of God, and they are so here for it. They are riding that wave. And whilst these probably aren't the same people that just days later are shouting for Jesus to be crucified, I do wonder where this crowd go. There is a mood shift, really, from this point in the Easter story on. And we don't hear or see much noise from the crowd supporting Jesus after this. Like the core group of disciples, this larger group have seen Jesus do and say some pretty incredible things over the 3 years of his earthly ministry. But I would be so bold as to say that they haven't really got to know Jesus. They haven't spent that one-on-one time with him. There isn't that relationship there. They haven't put that effort in. And so when the rubber hits the road and they are gone, out of fear, out of disappointment, out of embarrassment, I don't know. But they are an example to us that we, as Jesus' followers, need to put the effort in. Personally, I know that the thing I've been most convicted of during this year, and there's been a few things, but I think the thing I've been most convicted of during this year is how much I often rode the wave in my faith. What I mean is, I did my daily Bible reading and I prayed and all that good stuff. But when I got into one of those slumps, when I started to feel a bit about stuff going on and I couldn't really see or feel God in certain things, I would kind of coast until I got to a really great Christian conference, whether that be the HTB Leadership Conference, Soul Survivor, whatever it was, and I would have a few days of some excellent worship, some great teaching, and I would be back up on that wave to ride it again. But in this year, those things have been taken away. And so when I got into those moments, which happened quite a lot this year, where I was a bit bogged down, where I couldn't really see what was going on, rather than having an opportunity to go somewhere and have someone else fill me up, I had to dig deeper into my relationship with Jesus. I needed to build that one-on-one thing even more than I had before. And don't get me wrong, I still love a good conference, and I'm so excited for when they can be a thing again. But what I'm saying is that now I know that those will be the cherry on top of my faith, an added extra, not the meat, the thing that I really get my teeth into about my faith. They're not the thing I build my rhythm of faith on. Following Jesus is incredible, and I 10 out of 10 would recommend it to anyone. I've seen Jesus do some incredible things. I've been privileged to pray for healing and seen people be healed. I have had prayers answered that are huge, and some of them are completely insignificant to everybody else, but really matter to me. I've been blown away by the power and the majesty of God, but there have also been days where I have prayed my best, most well-formed prayers and been met with a wall of silence. There have been times when I've come crying to the Father, screaming and begging, and only to be met with a "No, my child." In those moments, the only thing that will sustain me and you and hold us up and keep us going is knowing Jesus. Knowing that even when I don't get it, when we don't get it, he is God. When I don't like it, he is God. He is God, and he loves me. So I don't need to be scared or embarrassed. I just need to stand firm and trust him. And the only way I get through those times is digging deeper into who he is and getting to know him better. I'm not saying it's easy. It very rarely is, but I'm saying it's worth it. Maybe that speaks to you today. We continue in verse 39. It starts like this. Some of the Pharisees in the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, rebuke your disciples." "I tell you," he replied, "if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." As he approached Jerusalem and saw the city, he wept over it and said, "If you, even you, had only known on this day what would bring you peace, but now it is hidden from your eyes. The days will come upon you when your enemies will build an embankment against you and circle you and hem you in on every side. They will dash you to the ground, you and the children within your walls. They will not leave one stone on another, because you did not recognize the time of God's coming to you." If you know a little bit about the New Testament, then you'll know that the Pharisees are the baddies. In a lot of Bible stories, we almost look at them like they're pantomime villains. But actually, there's something much more sinister going on here. The Pharisees have seen what everybody else in that crowd has seen. They have been there in the big moments, and they've asked all the big questions, and they've tried to catch Jesus out time and time again. And at every turn, he's bettered them. And yet, here we are with Jesus fulfilling yet another prophecy, and they are willfully ignoring what their eyes are seeing because it doesn't match up to what they envisaged the Messiah to be. So they rage against it. We all, rightly or wrongly, have a picture of what we think God is like in our heads. And this can feed into what we expect of him, and it can make us angry or upset or embarrassed when God doesn't live up to our worldly standards. The Bible shows us clearly who God is. And his promises are set out from the first line of Genesis to the last line of Revelation. But despite this, I know I have been guilty of, in the past, and pretty regularly, saying the words, "Well, I think God should," and then you can fill in the blank for whatever you think I think God should do. The Jewish people had a really strong narrative that they believed the Messiah should fulfill. And it stopped a lot of them from meeting the true Messiah. What are the expectations and ideas that we have made up about God that stops us coming into right relationship with him, that stop us truly knowing him? Now, on to the final bit of our passage for today, starting in verse 45. When Jesus entered the temple courts, he began to drive out those who were selling. "It is written," he said to them, "My house will be a house of prayer, but you have made it into a den of robbers." Every day he was teaching at the temple, but the chief priests and the teachers of the law and the leaders among the people were trying to kill him. Yet they could not find any way to do it, because all the people hung on his words. Finally, in this short passage, we see the people that haven't got it yet, who haven't encountered Jesus, that don't know the truth. And they completely miss the mark and get it wrong. They're using what God has given them for the wrong thing. But we see that when they meet Jesus, when they are rebuked by him, they hang on his every word, and he teaches them, making it impossible for the Pharisees to kill him. And so, to come back to our original question, what attitude are you entering into Easter with? As we start this Lent period, on the first Sunday of Lent, what are you bringing with you to Easter? Come to Jesus. Get yourself in right standing with him. Ask for his forgiveness and he will give it. Get rid of any expectation you have about what God should do. Prepare your hearts. open your hands and trust in him. Even if you don't get it, even if you don't necessarily like it, faithfully obey him. Because it is when we live in true obedience with God that we are blown away by what he does. And when we get to participate in what he's doing, it's amazing. You don't have to be perfect. None of us are. We just have to be willing to trust him. More than we see, more than we know, more than we can understand, we have to trust him. As we prepare for Easter, take some time to look at yourself and your relationship with God and see what he is doing and where you can join in with it.